Hello, this is Ben Television News Roundup, a compilation of major stories in the week ended. I'm Tunde Alabi. Thank you for being part of the program today.
For whenever we are tested as a nation, this party steps up to the plate. 7 years ago, our challenge was to repair the damage of Labour's Great Recession, and we did it. The deficit is down, spending is under control, our economy is growing again. But we didn't limit ourselves to that ambition. We have achieved so much more. An income tax cut for over 30 million people. 4 million taken out of paying it at all. Employment up to a record high. Unemployment down to an historic low. Income inequality at its lowest for 30 years. More women in work than ever before. Over 11,000 more doctors in our NHS. Over 11,000 more nurses on our hospital wards. Free childcare for 3- and 4-year-olds doubled. 1.8 million more children in good or outstanding schools. 3 million more apprenticeships. Crime down by more than a third. More young people from disadvantaged backgrounds going to university than at any time in the history of our country. Britain leading the world in tackling climate change, eradicating global poverty, and countering terrorism wherever it rears its head. Same-sex marriage on the statute book, so that two people who love each other can get married no matter what their gender. And a national living wage, giving a pay rise to the lowest earners, introduced not by the Labour Party, but by us, the Conservative Party. So let us never allow the left to pretend they have a monopoly on compassion. This is the good a Conservative government can do, and we should never let anyone forget it. But it's easy, when you've been in government for a while, to fall into the trap of defending your record and standing for the status quo. Yes, we're proud of the progress we have made, but the world doesn't stand still. Change, as Disraeli taught us, is constant and inevitable, and we must bend it to our will. That means staking out an agenda for Britain and uniting behind it too. And the agenda that I laid out on day one as Prime Minister still holds. It burns inside me just the same. Because at its core, it's about sweeping away injustice, the barriers that mean for some the British dream is increasingly out of reach. About saying what matters is not where you are from or who your parents are, the colour of your skin, whether you're a man or a woman, rich or poor, from the inner city or an affluent suburb. How far you go in life should depend on you and your hard work. That's why I've always taken on vested interests when they're working against the interests of the people, called out those who abuse their positions of power and given a voice to those who have been ignored or silenced for too long. And when people ask me why I put myself through it, the long hours, the pressure, the criticism, the insults that inevitably go with this job, I tell them this. I do it to root out injustice and to give everyone in our country a voice. And that's why, when I reflect on my time in politics, the things that make me proud are not the positions I've held, the world leaders I've met, the great global gatherings I've attended, but knowing that I made a difference, that I helped those who couldn't be heard. Like the families of the 96 men, women, and children who tragically lost their lives at Hillsborough. For years, they saw people in authority closing ranks and acting against them. But now they are on the way to see injustice served. That's what I'm in this for. Like the victims and survivors of child sexual abuse, ignored for years by people in positions of power, now on the long road to the truth. That's what I'm in this for. Like Alexander Paul, a young man who came to this conference 3 years ago to tell his story. The story of a young black boy growing up in modern Britain who, without causing any trouble, without doing anything wrong, found himself being stopped and searched by people in authority time and time and time again. Alexander spoke so eloquently about this experience and how he came to mistrust those in positions of power as a result. So, inspired by his example, we took action. We shook up the system, and the number of black people being stopped and searched has fallen by over 2/3. I'm sad to have to tell you that last year, Alexander, who inspired us all with his passion, was diagnosed with brain cancer. And in June of this year, he tragically passed away. He was just 21. Let us today remember the courage he showed in coming to our conference to speak out against injustice. Take pride that we gave him a platform, and inspired by his example, redouble our efforts to give a voice to the voiceless at every opportunity. That's what I'm in this for. And that same commitment is the reason why one of my first acts as Prime Minister was to establish the groundbreaking racial disparity audit, investigating how a person's race affects their treatment by public services so that we can take action and respond. We already know, for example, that members of black and minority ethnic communities have a higher risk of illnesses such as high blood pressure that may lead to the need for an organ transplant. But our ability to help people who need transplants is limited by the number of organ donors that come forward. And that's why last year, 500 people died because a suitable organ was not available. And there are 6,500 on the transplant list today. So to address this challenge that affects all communities in our country, we will change that system, shifting the balance of presumption in favour of organ donation, working on behalf of the most vulnerable.
And our message to the whole country could not be clearer. Labour is ready to tackle inequality, ready to rebuild our National Health Service, ready to give opportunity, to young people, dignity and security to all older people. Ready to invest in our economy and meet the challenges of climate change and of automation. Ready to put peace and justice at the heart of our foreign policy. And ready to build a new and progressive relationship with Europe. We are ready, and the Tories are Clearly not. They're certainly not strong, and they're definitely not stable. And they're hanging on by their fingertips. But this Tory government does have one thing we lack. They have tracked down the magic money tree. It's been found and it's been put to use. I'm not going to say good use, it's been put to use. When it was needed to keep Theresa May in Downing Street, it was given a good old shake. And lo and behold, we now know the price of power. It's approximately £100 million for each Democratic Unionist MP. During the election campaign, Theresa May told voters they faced the threat of a coalition of chaos. Do you remember that? Well, now they're showing us just exactly how that works. I don't just mean the Prime Minister's desperate deal with the DUP. She's got a coalition of chaos all around her cabinet table. Philip Hammond and Liam Fox, Boris Johnson and David Davis, at each other's throats, squabbling and plotting, manoeuvring to bundle the PM out of number 10 and take her place at the first opportunity, instead of getting to grips with the momentous issues facing this country. But this coalition of chaos is no joke. Just look at the record since the Conservatives have been in office. The longest fall in people's pay since records began. Homelessness doubled. Look around the streets of Brighton and every other city and you see the effects of it. NHS waiting lists lengthening, school class sizes growing and teachers leaving. Over 4 million children now living in poverty. 20,000 police officers and 11,000 firefighters lost their jobs because of this government. More people in work and in poverty than ever before. And condemned by the United Nations for violating the rights of disabled people. That's not strong and stable. It's callous and it's calculating. Because the Tories calculated that making life worse for millions in the name of austerity would pay for hefty tax handouts for the rich and powerful. Conference, your efforts in the election campaign stopped the Tories in their tracks. The election result has already delivered one Tory U-turn after another over some, only some, of their most damaging policies. The cruel dementia tax was scrapped within 3 days of it being announced because we challenged it. Plans to bring back grammar schools have been ditched. The threat to the pensions triple lock abandoned. Withdrawal of winter fuel payments dumped. The pledge, such a Tory pledge, to bring back fox hunting was eventually dropped as well. And their plan to end the free school meals that exist in primary schools has been binned. The reality is this, that barely 3 months since the election, this coalition of Conservative chaos is tearing up its manifesto and tearing itself apart. They're bereft of ideas and they're bereft of energy. We've got plenty of energy, I assure you of that. Indeed, they seem to be cherry-picking Labour policies instead, including on Brexit. So I say to the Prime Minister, we're very generous, you're welcome. But go the whole hog. End austerity, abolish tuition fees, scrap the public sector pay cap, I think we can find a Commons majority for that. That Commons majority is over there. Thank you. This is a weak and divided government with no purpose beyond clinging to power. It's Labour that's now setting the agenda, winning the arguments for a new common sense about the direction our country should take. My principles come from my mum and dad and the way they brought me up and the principles they gave me. They come from my family, they come from the community I live in and am very proud to represent in Finsbury Park. They're my roots and they ground everything that I do. But, conference, there were two stars of our election campaign. The first was our manifesto that drew on the ideas of our members and trade unionists and the hopes and the aspirations of communities and workplaces all over the country. And we were clear about how we would pay for it by asking the richest and the largest corporations to start paying their fair share. Not simply to redistribute within a system that isn't delivering for most people, but to transform that system. So we set out not only how we would protect public services, but how we would rebuild and invest in our economy with a publicly owned engine of sustainable growth, driven by national and regional investment banks to generate good jobs and real prosperity in every region and nation of this country. Our manifesto is the programme of a modern, progressive, socialist party that's rediscovered its roots and purpose, bucking the trend all across Europe. And conference, the other star of the campaign was you, all of you. Our members, our supporters, and the trade unions, our doorstep and our social media campaigners, young people sharing messages and stories on social media, hundreds of thousands organising online and on the ground to outplay the Tories' big money machine.
It was an act of pure evil. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security are working closely with local authorities to assist with the investigation, and they will provide updates as to the investigation and how it develops. I want to thank the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and all of the first responders for their courageous efforts and for helping to save the lives of so many. The speed with which they acted is miraculous and prevented further loss of life. To have found the shooter so quickly after the first shots were fired is something for which we will always be thankful and grateful. It shows what true professionalism is all about. Hundreds of our fellow citizens are now mourning the sudden loss of a loved one, a parent, a child, a brother or sister. We cannot fathom their pain. We cannot imagine their loss. To the families of the victims, we are praying for you, and we are here for you. And we ask God to help see you through this very dark period. Scripture teaches us the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. We seek comfort in those words, for we know that God lives in the hearts of those who grieve. To the wounded who are now recovering in hospitals, we are praying for your full and speedy recovery and pledge to you our support from this day forward. In memory of the fallen, I have directed that our great flag be flown at half-staff.
With that report, we conclude the news roundup for this week. Thank you for being part of the program. I'm Tunde Alabi. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye. As part of our continued efforts to reach the African and other ethnic communities in the United Kingdom with greater impacts and create the platform to hear your silent and unheard views in this hugely growing community in the United Kingdom, our channel, Ben TV, presents to you another live current affairs television program. Our focus on the program is to review and discuss issues around the diaspora community in the UK. The program offers you that unrestricted voice on issues affecting you in the UK. Join us live every Monday at 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Another business segment of Dialogue in Diaspora, 2 to 3 p.m. every Monday. But guess what? You can be part of the program. Just send us an email at bentelevisionuk@gmail.com. Dialogue in Diaspora, your voice, your opinion on our TV.